Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. One day before the Alaska summit, Donald Trump is turning up the heat. He's threatening Russia with severe consequences. Has he changed his tone after talking to Europe, or has he changed his mind? Also, how is Putin approaching this? He's planning to hold a missile test during the summit. What is the signal from Moscow? And as we've been telling you, India will be watching this meeting closely. The US has threatened more tariffs if the Alaska summit fails. Worse, it has asked Europe to sanction India too. Also a report on why this meeting is being called Yalta 2.0. In this part of the world, an India-China realignment is underway. We'll bring you the latest on that. In Washington's power corridors, Pakistan is outspending India on lobbying. And Trump's Nobel obsession, just how far will it take him? That's a special report on the Sudan, battered by war and forgotten by the world. Do you really need vitamin supplements? And the story of the Indian diaspora, global power rooted in India. All this and more lined up. The headlines first. In India, a massive cloudburst in Jammu and Kashmir kills at least 32 people. More than 100 are missing. The cloudburst triggered flash floods leading to large-scale destruction. It is the second major flooding incident in India this month. On the 5th of August, floods swept away a Himalayan town in the state of Uttarakhand. A Russian delegation arrives in North Korea just days after the country's leaders vowed to strengthen ties. On Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke with North Korea's Kim Jong-un ahead of his meeting with US President Donald Trump on Friday. Pyongyang has sent thousands of troops and weapons to help Moscow in the Ukraine war. Israel says it intercepted a missile fired from Yemen. The Houthis have claimed responsibility for the attack. The Iran-backed group said that their target was Israel's Ben Gurion airport. The Houthis have repeatedly launched missiles and drones at Israel since the Gaza war began in October 2023. Foreign ministers of China, Thailand and Cambodia meet in the Yunnan province. Beijing offers support in clearing landmines in the border areas and urges Thailand and Cambodia to reopen border crossings. Last month's violence between the Southeast Asian neighbors was the deadliest in decades. And Jair Bolsonaro's lawyers asked Brazil's Supreme Court to acquit him. The former Brazilian president is on trial over an alleged coup plot. Bolsonaro faces up to 40 years in prison if found guilty. His trial has led to diplomatic tensions between Brazil and the US.
There will be very severe consequences.
Just one more day left. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will be meeting tomorrow. It's all anyone can talk about. Both leaders will be flying to the icy capital of Alaska. They will meet at a military base in Anchorage. Now, at first, everyone was downplaying the summit. Trump said it was a feeling out event. The White House called it a listening exercise. But one day out, things are heating up. The statements are getting sharper, the diplomacy is gathering pace, and Trump is playing hardball. Yesterday, he spoke to his European counterparts on the phone. President Zelensky was also on that call, and afterwards Donald Trump gave a press conference. He struck a very different note. No more managing expectations. Trump issued an ultimatum to Russia. End the war or face severe consequences.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
And that changed fast. How does a listening exercise end with severe consequences? Either Trump is confusing the agenda or he's changed his mind. And if it's the latter, if Trump has indeed changed his mind, then Europe may have played a role. Let's hit rewind now. Last week, Trump's special envoy visited Moscow. He met Putin for close to 3 hours. In those talks, Moscow made a proposal. Ukraine will cede land in the eastern Donbas region. In exchange, the front lines would be frozen. Apparently, Trump liked that proposal. He agreed to meet Putin and seal the deal. Later that week, Trump informed Zelensky about this plan, and that's when alarm bells rang. Ukraine launched a diplomatic offensive. Zelensky spoke to 30 world leaders in 1 week, 30 leaders. His goal was to rally his allies, basically use Europe to shape Trump's mind. Which brings us to yesterday. All that diplomacy ended with a high-stakes phone call. European leaders and Zelensky spoke to Donald Trump. They conveyed 3 red lines. 1, no crucial decisions without Ukraine. 2, peace must start with a ceasefire. And 3, any deal would require security guarantees for Ukraine. But did they sway Donald Trump? Looks like they did. Trump says Russia will face severe consequences. He's also working on a trilateral summit. Him, Zelensky, and Putin.
If the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately. And we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky and myself, if they'd like to have me there. And that would be a meeting where maybe it could be absolutely work.
Trump's words have certainly changed. It makes you wonder what happened in that video call. Most European leaders were happy about it. Trump himself rated it 10 on 10. We heard some statements after the call. President Macron of France, Prime Minister Starmer of the UK, Chancellor Merz of Germany, all of them sounded optimistic. They presented a unified front to Donald Trump. The UK Prime Minister summed it up best.
Firstly, and obviously, there can be no negotiations about Ukraine without Ukraine. And that's been a long-standing principle of this group. And I know Vladimir is on the call and will be absolutely clear in relation to that. And along with that, that international borders cannot be and must not be changed by force.
Zelensky attended the call in Berlin. After that, he flew to London. He met Prime Minister Starmer earlier today. Now, all of Europe has the same concern, that Trump will give in to Putin, that he will make significant concessions in Alaska. Zelensky also warned about that. He told Trump that Putin was bluffing.
I told the President of the United States and all our European colleagues, Putin is bluffing. He is trying to put pressure on all fronts of the Ukrainian front ahead of the meeting in Alaska. Russia is trying to portray itself as capable of occupying the whole of Ukraine. This is undoubtedly their desire.
The worry is understandable. In the past, Putin has played Trump. Just think back to their meeting in 2018. All the focus was on alleged Russian meddling in America. But Trump has made a full U-turn. He said he trusted Putin over his spy agencies. And Europe is basically fearing a repeat. But at this point, nothing is certain. A few months back, Trump was more optimistic about things. Remember, he promised to end the war in 24 hours. But he underestimated Putin. This time, he's being more careful. Reports say Trump is quizzing his aides about Putin. He wants to know if the Russian president has changed. I'm afraid he won't get a straight answer. The Kremlin is a tightly guarded enigma. Even US officials have difficulty assessing Putin, which is why the summit is so unpredictable. Nobody knows what either side is bringing to the table. For instance, which Trump will we see in Alaska? The one who brags about his friendship with Putin, or the one who's meticulously being briefed by Europe? Recent statements suggest that Trump will be tough. As for Putin, that's our next story. Trump has set the stage with strong words, but Putin has gone a step ahead. He is preparing to test a lethal nuclear missile. It's not official yet, but Western analysts say it will happen later this week, possibly around the summit. And how do they know that? Thanks to satellite images. Pictures show a heavy buildup near a Russian test site. It's called Pankovo. It's located on an island north of Russia's mainland. You can see ships, aircraft, and equipment. All of it suggests a looming test of a lethal cruise missile called the Burevestnik. It's nuclear-armed and nuclear-powered. NATO calls it Skyfall. Putin has been all praise of this missile. He says it can evade all existing and future defense systems, maybe even Trump's Golden Dome. But the story here is not the capabilities. The story is the timing. Yes, such tests are scheduled months in advance, but Putin could have postponed it. He did not, because he wants to send a message. Let's unpack what that message is. Putin is heading to Alaska with momentum. His troops are making progress across the front line. Meanwhile, Ukraine is struggling. They are low on soldiers and weapons. So there's no reason for Putin to make concessions. If anything, he can double down now. At the same time, he's humoring Donald Trump, playing to his ego. We saw an example of that today. Putin held a meeting of his top advisors. In that meeting, he praised Trump's intentions.
I will tell you about the stage we are at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis, and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, in order to create long-term conditions for peace both between our countries and in Europe and in the world.
Putin says Trump is working for peace, not just in Ukraine, but in the whole world. I'm sure Trump will enjoy that praise from Putin. In the past, he's shown a knack for handling President Trump. We gave you an example from 2018 that was one instance of Trump being soft on Russia. We saw another yesterday. Trump was asked about a recent hack into the US court system. American agencies feel Russia could be behind it. But listen to Trump's response.
There's new reporting that the Russians have hacked into some computer systems that manage US federal court documents. I wonder if you've seen this reporting and if you plan to bring it up with Putin when you see him later in the week.
I guess I could. Are you surprised? You know, are you surprised? They hack in. That's what they do. They're good at it. We're good at it. We're actually better at it. But no, I have heard about it. I have heard about it.
So Putin has two things going for him. First is the ground advantage. The second is a good track record. He is known to be a tough negotiator, and he's had success against Donald Trump. But does he have a wish list in Alaska? I'm sure he does. Best case scenario, Trump agrees with him. He signs away eastern Ukraine to Russia, he cuts off military aid, and he freezes the conflict. That would give Russia time to regroup. Plus, it would give them new launch pads in eastern Ukraine. So that's the ideal scenario for Putin. But let's face it, even Trump is not that naive. He will push Putin to make some concessions, maybe a ceasefire in the air, meaning no aerial attacks or bombing, or maybe a prisoner swap, or maybe a deal to release detained civilians. If Putin agrees to this, he will want something in return. If not in Ukraine, then bilaterally. Remember, Russia faces thousands of sanctions. Its foreign reserves are frozen in the West. Ideally, Putin would like to make progress on that. And the Kremlin has hinted at this. They said bilateral issues will also be on the agenda. They said Russia and the US had untapped potential.
An exchange of views is expected on further developing bilateral cooperation, including in the trade and economic sphere. I would like to note that this cooperation has huge and unfortunately hitherto untapped potential.
This would be a win for Putin. I know an aerial ceasefire sounds like a big concession, but it's not, because it goes two ways. Yes, Russia launches a lot of drones and missiles, but so does Ukraine. 2 attacks were reported today. Kiev fired drones into Belgorod and Rostov-on-Don. Take a look.
Глянь, хуярит в дом, блядь. Сука.
So the air battle is happening two ways. If that stops, Russia can focus all its energy on the ground, and frankly, that is what matters. Putin's objective is to gain as much territory as possible. So here's the bottom line. Trump is looking for a headline from this summit, some sort of symbolic announcement. If Putin can give him that, he can get something in return, basically a classic Trump transaction. Russia says both leaders will do a joint press conference after the meeting, so breakthrough or not, you're guaranteed fireworks. India will be watching the meeting in Alaska closely because it could shape the future of India-US relations, and Trump's team is sending the same signal. Consider what Scott Bessent said. He is the US Treasury Secretary. He says if there's no breakthrough on Ukraine, the US will raise secondary tariffs on India. And it does not stop there. Bessent wants the European Union to do the same. He wants them to impose similar tariffs on India.
We put a secondary tariff on Indians for buying Russian oil, and I could see if things don't go well, then sanctions or secondary tariffs could go up. President Trump is meeting with President Putin, and the Europeans are in the wings carping about how he should do it, what he should do. The Europeans need to join us in these sanctions. The Europeans need to be willing to put on these secondary sanctions.
It's a clear case of economic hostage-taking. Here is how Trump and team are looking at this. If Trump does not get a deal from Putin, they will raise more tariffs on India and get Europe to do the same. No such tough talk for China, though. And Bessent was asked about this, about China's purchases of Russian crude. Beijing is Moscow's largest customer for Russian oil. Will America put a tariff on China for that? That was the question. And Bessent was non-committal. He said, all options are on the table. That's all that he said. But let the double standards be kept aside for a moment. Let's set them aside for now. Let's talk about Trump's strategy. His plan to use tariffs to gain leverage over Russia. Is that plan really working? And how effective is the strategy? Trump says the tariffs are working, that they are hurting Russia's economy and isolating Putin. But does that claim hold water? Is Putin really isolated? Well, India, for one, is not cutting ties with Russia. Instead, the partnership is deepening. Earlier this month, both countries signed a pact. It aims to expand industrial cooperation in a range of sectors: aluminium, fertilizers, railways, mining, and technology. And that's not all. There's been a flurry of high-level engagements. Last week, Ajit Doval was in Moscow. He's India's national security advisor. He met Russian President Putin. And he discussed a whole lot of issues, from energy to defense. In fact, a key focus area was joint projects. India and Russia wish to work together on several fronts. Here's what the Russians said about it. I'm quoting. The two sides discussed the topical issues of military technical cooperation between Russia and India and implementation of joint projects in other strategic areas, including civil aircraft, metallurgy, and chemical industry. So instead of moving away, New Delhi is investing more in this relationship. 5 days back, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a phone call with President Putin. He invited the Russian president to India, and this could happen before the end of this year. Preparations are gathering pace. Next week, S. Jaishankar will visit Russia. He's India's External Affairs Minister. Jaishankar will hold consultations with Sergei Lavrov. He's the Russian Foreign Minister. And together, they will lay the groundwork for Putin's visit to India. So Trump's tariffs are having the opposite effect. Instead of driving a wedge between India and Russia, he's bringing them closer. He may brand the tariffs as pressure, but they are in fact a diversionary tactic meant to hide his own failures. He promised to end the Ukraine war within 24 hours of taking office on his first day as president. It's been more than 200 days. Instead of ending, the war is intensifying. Now all eyes are on the Alaska summit, but a deal looks unlikely. The White House is already downplaying expectations. If those talks collapse, if the meeting ends without a deal, there will be no one left for Trump to blame except himself. The summit may be in Alaska, but the Western media is talking about Yalta. They're comparing tomorrow's summit to the famous 1945 conference, or should I say infamous Yalta was widely seen as a failure. It was attended by the victors of the Second World War. Their goal was to create lasting peace, but the outcome was the opposite. Yalta redrew national boundaries. It carved up spheres of influence, and that too without the affected countries at the table. Basically, it was hegemonic diplomacy. Why is Alaska being compared to that, and is the comparison warranted? Our next report tells you.
Will Alaska 2025 be a repeat of Yalta 1945? Many Western newspapers have drawn this parallel. They have dusted off their old, Cold War-style hysteria. But is there truth in this comparison? Yalta is a coastal city on the Crimean Peninsula. In 1945, after the Second World War ended in Europe, this city hosted a historic meeting. In attendance were the big three leaders: US President Franklin Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. They represented the three countries that won the war. Their goal in Yalta? To carve up the war-torn world. Borders and frontiers were redrawn at that meeting. The Soviets would retain influence over Eastern Europe. They would also be granted parts of Manchuria, a region that combined pockets of China and Russia. This meeting happened 8 decades ago. So why the comparison to Alaska 2025? Because there are fears of territorial concessions. Donald Trump has suggested that Ukraine and Russia will have to swap lands. But Ukraine will not be represented in Alaska. That's where the comparison stems from. Western analysts fear that Trump and Putin will carve up Ukraine. That too, without any Ukrainian at the table. The same thing happened at Yalta too. Decisions were taken about Poland, Eastern Europe, and China. But those countries were not at the table. If that does happen in Alaska, the comparison would be warranted. But right now, it's far-fetched. And there are 4 reasons why. Number 1. Yalta was a post-war conference. It happened once the outcome of the fighting in Europe was clear. In Alaska, it's the opposite. Friday's summit is aimed at ending the war. Number 2. The world has changed a lot since 1945. Yalta preceded the United Nations. It was held during a period of global turmoil and upheaval. 2025 is not that. Number 3. Yalta dealt with multiple countries. It had to settle the question of post-war Germany. It had to decide the future of Poland and Eastern Europe. Again, Alaska is different. This summit is focused solely on one country, and that's Ukraine. And finally, reason number 4. Yalta was a conference of allies. In 1945, the US, Britain, and the Soviets were fighting together. In 2025, the US and Russia are not allies. Even a volatile leader like Trump understands that. So the chances of Alaska becoming a Yalta are slim. But the commentary around it is worrying. Along with Yalta, analysts have compared Alaska to other 20th century summits too. Like Munich 1938, where Britain tried to appease Hitler. Or Potsdam 1945, where Europe's borders were redrawn. All these summits led to grave political errors. They unleashed decades of Cold War rivalry between the US and the Soviets. So comparing them to Alaska is a defeatist approach. Any attempt to end the Ukraine war must be welcomed. But unless all the stakeholders talk, there can be no negotiated settlement. And outdated comparisons do not help.
Let's talk about India and China. We've been telling you how they're mending ties. It's not a full-blown reset yet, more like a tactical realignment. Both sides are issuing tourist visas again. Direct flights are set to resume. Export and investment curbs are being eased. And later this month, Prime Minister Modi will be in China. This will be his first trip to the country in 7 years. So the thaw is very much in progress. Here are the latest developments. 1. India is sending diesel to China. The shipment is already on its way. It's the first of its kind since 2021. And how big is the shipment? Nearly 500,000 barrels of diesel. The cargo was loaded in July. Initially, it was headed for Malaysia, but now it's been redirected to China. And why did that happen? Why did the destination change? Because the supplier was sanctioned. A firm called N18G is supplying this diesel. It's a refiner with Russian links. They run India's third largest refinery. Nayara was blacklisted by Brussels in July by the European Union. So payments have become harder. Shipments were stranded and supplies have taken a hit. And that is why this consignment was redirected. The cargo waited for 12 days at sea before it was asked to change course and move towards China. Access to Malaysia was a challenge, and China was happy to take this supply. Like I said, it's the first such move in 4 years, and that's the first significant development. The second one is related to the border. India and China may resume border trade. Again, it would be the first time in more than 5 years. Reports say talks are underway. Both sides are discussing the possibilities. One of them involves using designated crossing points. Now, border trade is not a new idea. For over 3 decades, India and China have traded locally made goods. The trading activity was modest. But 5 years back, it came to a grinding halt. First because of the pandemic and then because of the border tensions. India and China traded goods like spices, carpets, wooden furniture, cattle fodder, pottery, medicinal plants, electric goods and wool. Between 2017 and 2018, the value of this trade was more than $3 million, which is not a big number, but it's still significant in the larger scheme of things, this resumption. The resumption of border trade points to normalization of ties. And that brings me to what's happening next week. In 4 days from now, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India. We've told you about this on the show. It would be Wang Yi's first visit in 3 years. He will meet National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. And what's on the agenda? The border situation. India and China share a border that stretches 3,400 kilometers. Both sides are keen on reducing troop levels along this border. They disengaged in eastern Ladakh last year. Despite that, they maintain a large troop presence on the border, both sides. Deployments were ramped up in 2020 after the troops clashed in Galwan. And since then, the situation has remained precarious. And scaling down military presence would be a big step forward. It would speed up normalization efforts, also revive groups like RIC, the Russia-India-China Troika. Moscow has expressed interest in reviving the RIC dialogue. So has China. As for India, they recently hinted that they're open to the idea. And they can test the waters in the coming days. India is holding separate high-level engagements with both Russia and China. Next week, Wang Yi will be visiting New Delhi. 2 days later, S. Jaishankar will travel to Moscow. If these talks are fruitful, they will set the stage for the revival of RIC. But New Delhi must tread with caution, drawing on lessons from the past to navigate the challenges of the future. K Street in Washington, D.C. is not just any other street. It's a massive industry, home to America's political middlemen, the lobbyists. For the right price, they will make sure your country's voice is heard, preferably in the Oval Office. And right now, one country is speaking louder than ever. I'm talking about Pakistan. According to a report, Pakistan is spending $600,000 per month on lobbying in the US. $600,000 every month. That's more than 17 crore Pakistani rupees. For a broke country, that's a lot of money. Also, it's 3 times what India spends. Our economy is 10 times the size of Pakistan, yet Pakistan is outspending us on lobbying. What explains this? And why do foreign countries lobby in America at all? Tonight we'll break it down. You see, the US is often the capital of the world's rule book. Decisions here ripple across the globe, from tariffs to sanctions. What America decides to do is important for the world, whether they like it or not. And it's important especially for countries that depend on the US. You cannot afford to be a stranger in DC. And that's where lobbying comes in. Governments hire people who know the system. These could be aides or retired generals or former ambassadors, basically people who know which door to knock on. The primary idea is access, to push and nudge before a policy is formalized, to shape the story before it's told. And that brings us to the FARA, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Under this law, anyone representing a foreign principal has to register with the DOJ, the US Department of Justice. The foreign principal here could be a country, a political party, even a tourism board. So they must register with the Department of Justice. And that means there is some transparency, but of course, there are plenty of loopholes. There's a less strict rule called the Lobbying Disclosure Act. Then there are diaspora groups. They operate outside the FARA scope. But in principle, if you're pushing a foreign government's line, you have to log it. And here's how it works. Foreign lobbying boils down to three things. First, hire the insiders. Like I said, former aides, politicians, retired generals, people who know who to call and when. Second, shape the narrative. PR firms craft opinion pieces, they manage media appearance, they massage reputations. Third, push the paperwork. Basically, meet the lawmakers and draft policy proposals, all designed to get your country's talking points across. So where does Islamabad's money go? The first recipient is Orchid Advisors LLC. They get $250,000 per month. It is to secure meetings with Trump officials, also with the World Bank and the IMF. How else will Pakistan fund its lobbying? The second recipient of Pakistani funds is Seed & Law. They receive around $200,000 per month. This is to cut trade deals, also lure US investment in critical minerals. Subcontractors include Trump's former bodyguard. And third is Corvus Communications. They get $150,000 per month. And what is this money for? It's for reputation management. This is the same firm that Saudi Arabia used after 9/11. In comparison, India spends a total of $200,000 per month. It is divided between two firms largely, SHW Partners and the BGR Group. Now, like I said, Pakistan is outspending India by about 3 times. What about the rest of the world? We have numbers from 2023. In that year, 2023, more than $4 billion was spent on lobbying in the US. This was money spent by various countries in the world on the United States. Liberia, for instance, spent $235 million, $235 million on lobbying. Since 2016, China has been the highest spender. Then we have Japan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. They all spend hundreds of millions of dollars. They lobby for almost everything from defense contracts to trade concessions, sometimes with great success, sometimes with none at all. That brings us to the point we started with. Why is Pakistan spending more than India? Because they have no other options. They are broke and dependent on the US, on US aid. Washington's goodwill can make or break Pakistan, so lobbying for Pakistan is not a strategy, it is a survival mechanism. However, for India, the relationship with America is a choice. Having said that, it does not mean that India becomes complacent. We may not need to flood K Street with checkbooks, yet a little more presence, a little more push would not hurt. Because if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. The world has witnessed many epic love stories. Romeo and Juliet, Cleopatra and Antony, Heer and Ranjha, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, if you like. But none compare to the most enduring, most unrequited of all love stories, Donald Trump and the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a romance where one party sends endless love letters, drops hints in every speech and tries to prove its might, but the other doesn't seem to care. it pretends that Trump does not even exist. And yet, the US president waits, wooing endlessly at every possible occasion. Last month, Trump called the Norwegian finance minister. The call was to discuss trade tariffs, but do you know what else he talked about? The Nobel Peace Prize. Guess that's true love. And like they say, when you want something, the universe conspires to help you achieve it. In this case, it's not the universe, it's countries that want to humor Trump. They're using the Nobel Peace Prize as bait. Leading the charge was Pakistan. It nominated Trump for the prize after Trump claimed credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire. Of course, he did not broker it. Pakistan of all should know this. But when has truth stopped Pakistan? So they agreed with Trump. Then came Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not only nominated Trump, he declared it in the White House, like a magician, revealing the final trick.
He's forging peace as we speak, in one country and one region after the other. So I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Cambodia, too, gave Trump the nod after the border clash with Thailand ended. 40 people were killed, 300,000 were displaced, but Cambodia calls it a win for Donald Trump. Armenia and Azerbaijan followed suit. They've spent decades fighting each other, but they agreed on one thing, that Trump should get the Nobel Peace Prize.
So maybe we agree with Prime Minister Pashinyan to send a joint appeal to Nobel Committee to award President Trump with the Nobel Peace Prize, because from the leaders of the countries which were at war for more than 3 decades, having this historic signature here, it really means a lot. This is tangible result of President Trump's leadership.
So did Rwanda and Gabon. They praised Trump for helping end a Congo conflict. So several countries have nominated Trump. And it shows you one thing. The shortest route to Trump's heart is a plane ticket to Oslo. But why is he so obsessed with the Nobel Peace Prize? Well, to be fair, Trump likes any prize as long as it's gold. It is gold and shiny. But the Nobel has a special charm, and that's because of Barack Obama. In 2009, Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to strengthen international diplomacy. It was quite ill-deserved. The world slammed it and moved on. But Donald Trump did not. He could not move on. He can't seem to forget Obama's Nobel. That moment lives rent-free in his mind. And the fact that he has not got it is a great betrayal. So Trump is treating this like American Idol. The White House is running a PR campaign trying to keep the phone lines in Oslo ringing.
Since 1978, the Kennedy Center honors have been among the most prestigious awards in the performing arts. I wanted one. I was never able to get one. This year, it's true, actually. I would have taken it if they would have called me. I waited and waited and waited, and I said, the hell with it. I'll become chairman, and I'll give myself an honor. Maybe I'm going to honor, next year we'll honor Trump, okay?
But that's not how the Nobel works. Every year, the Nobel Committee receives anywhere between 250 to 400 nominations. Some of them are serious, some are just symbolic. After the nomination deadline, a 5-member committee makes a shortlist. For months, the committee deliberates. They vote, and finally, a winner is announced in October. The whole process is a secret. The names of nominees are not publicly released for 50 years. The committee usually does not care about buzz. They also do not appreciate lobbying. So what Trump is doing may be counterproductive. But when has that stopped him? His former national security advisor summed it up best. I'm talking about John Bolton. In an interview with Firstpost, Bolton said nominating Trump makes all the difference. He even joked that maybe India should try it. Nominate him twice, not even once.
My suggestion to Prime Minister Modi is that when he talks to Trump next, he should offer to nominate him twice for a Nobel Peace Prize, and to keep nominating him until he gets it. Maybe that'll help.
So should India play along? Well, this is where it gets tricky. On the one hand, nominating Trump could be a way to avoid tariff tantrums. We would have nothing to lose. On the other, it's like giving him a lifetime supply of ego protein powder. Once you start, you cannot stop. He'll be asking about it on every phone call. The smarter move: don't nominate him at all. Let him keep chasing it, believing that next year is the one. The Nobel Peace Prize could become his personal white whale, and he might just be happier chasing it than actually catching it. Our next story tonight is about the forgotten war. I'm talking about the conflict in the Sudan. This is a country in Northeast Africa. It has been engulfed in deadly violence since 2023. That's when a civil war broke out between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary group called RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. This war has battered the country. It has created the world's largest displacement crisis. It has fueled famine and disease, but it's only intensifying the war, and the RSF has been pushing for more control, not just in terms of territory, but also politically. A few weeks ago, the RSS unveiled a parallel government, but now the United Nations has rejected it. So what does this mean for the war? Here's a report.
There will be no rival government in the Sudan. That's what the United Nations Security Council has said. They have rejected plans laid out by the Sudanese paramilitary group in the Northeast African country. In late June, the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, made the announcement. They claim to have formed a parallel government, a so-called transitional peace government, to rival the Sudan's wartime government in Port Sudan. And now, the UN has rejected it with a strongly worded statement, warning that the move fragments the Sudan, threatens the country's territorial integrity, worsens an already dire humanitarian situation, and further exacerbates the ongoing conflict. The civil war broke out in April 2023 between the Sudanese army and the RSF. Since then, the country has been engulfed in deadly violence. Some 40,000 people have been killed. Nearly 13 million have been displaced, making it the world's largest displacement crisis. The conflict has effectively split the country into two parts. The army holds grip over parts of the north, east, and center, while the RSF dominates nearly all of Darfur and parts of the south. Earlier this year, they lost control of the capital, Khartoum, so they responded by amping up attacks in the Darfur region. This vast region has been hit hard by the war. There are allegations of war crimes by the RSF being investigated by the International Criminal Court. In recent months, RSF has stepped up the battle for El Fasher, the last army foothold that remains in North Darfur. Earlier this week, fighting escalated in the region. RSF gunned down people in public, opened fire inside homes, and attacked a camp for displaced people. At least 40 people were killed and several others injured. But the growing attacks are only part of the problem. Fighting in the Sudan has also created a crisis of hunger. Famine has been declared in many parts of the country.
Some residents of the area are reportedly surviving on animal fodder and food waste. The escalating needs make it imperative to address the hunger situation at a scale that is actually required.
The Sudan has been hit by its worst cholera outbreak in years as well. At least 40 people have died over the span of 1 week in the western Darfur region alone. Cholera can be easily treated with cheap medicines, but they aren't accessible. As people seek refuge from the bloodshed in cramped spaces, health services are unable to handle the disease burden.
Relentless violence has pushed Sudan's health system to the edge, adding to a crisis marked by hunger, illness, and despair. Cholera has swept across Sudan, with all the states reporting outbreaks. Nearly 100,000 cases have been reported since July last year.
As for cholera, we try to fight it by squeezing a lemon into the water. We mix lemon in the water when we have it and drink it as medicine. We have no other choice. Even the water itself is scarce.
So as people of the Sudan brave hunger, displacement, and disease, fighting continues to rage. After rejecting the rival government, the UN has called for talks between the army and RSF to reach a lasting ceasefire. Unsurprisingly, the Sudan has already heard this advice one too many times. But this call for peace has not been able to stop the war that is ravaging the country.
Want glowing skin, glossy hair, better sleep, longer life? Why don't you take a vitamin supplement? If you have heard this advice before, you're not alone. From doctors to TikTok influencers, everyone is recommending supplements. And you can choose what kind: pills, injections, gummies, even cutesy patches. Together, they make up a multi-billion-dollar global market. In 2022, it stood at $48 billion. 48 billion multivitamins. By the end of this decade, it is poised to reach $85 billion. But can multivitamins really hack your health? Should all of us be taking them? To understand this, let's go back to basics. Our bodies need different kinds of nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. And these last two, vitamins and minerals, are called micronutrients because we need them in small amounts. But they're important nonetheless. For instance, we need vitamin C for a healthy immune system. We need vitamin A for good eyesight and skin. As for minerals, we need calcium for stronger bones and magnesium for good muscle function. So vitamins and minerals are crucial, but the problem is our bodies do not make them. We get them from food, from a healthy diet. And we already know this, but not many of us eat healthy food. So enter supplements. They promise to bridge the gap, to satisfy some of our nutritional needs. And sometimes they do. There is evidence that popping multivitamin pills can help. Studies have shown a slightly lower risk of cancer and heart disease, a big reduction in cognitive decline. Some even show slower aging. And yet, supplements are a controversial topic, because for every study that shows you the benefits, there are many more telling you the complete opposite. For instance, research also shows that multivitamins do not improve heart health, do not reduce the risk of certain cancers, and make no difference to your lifespan. Plus, if we consume too much of them, there are big risks. For instance, if people take too much vitamin D, they can suffer from seizures, coma, and even death. Excess of vitamin A can cause blurred vision, nausea, dizziness, even coma and death. So supplements can be a dangerous proposition. And this is not because all supplements are bad, but because their dosage is often incorrect. So people end up mega dosing, overdosing. Maybe because they do not know when to stop, or because they buy tainted, unregulated products like the ones often pushed on social media. They can contain 500, even 1,000% of the recommended allowance. So coming back to the original question, do you really need vitamin supplements? Again, the answer is complicated. After all, science is still debating the benefits, and sometimes things can go very wrong. So there is no one right answer. But here's what you can do. First, unlearn the myths. We have all heard that vitamin C can cure a cold, or that overdosing on it can save you from cancer or heart disease, none of which is true. This theory has been debunked. So do your homework. Secondly, talk to a doctor whom you trust. Too many of us take too many supplements. Look at the numbers. In India, 71% people take supplements. In the US, 74%. In Australia, nearly half the population. But a majority of us do not need them. Because if there's one thing that science is clear on, it is this: supplements help, but only in specific cases, like with vegans, pregnant or older people, and in limited doses. For most of us, a healthy diet is the answer because it is more than sufficient. It gives us all the nutrients we need, plus it works fast. Because vitamins from food are absorbed more easily, which is why multivitamins have a nickname: expensive urine. So simply put, not enough is known about many supplements, their risks, their benefits, or their correct dosage. And what's on the packaging can be very different from what's inside the product. So always check with your doctor, use caution, and know that there is no magic pill for good health. From remote plantations to the pinnacles of global power, the journey of the Indian diaspora is one of struggle, strength, and success. This is not just a story of migration. but of how India's roots took hold across continents. Millions of Indians have built lives all over the world. They have stayed connected to their roots and shaped the world around them as global CEOs, policymakers, and innovators, because the Indian diaspora is no longer just a colonial legacy. It is no longer a scattered community. It is a powerful global force. Take a look. India's story was never meant to stay within its borders. For centuries, its people have journeyed across oceans, chasing opportunity, braving hardship, carrying with them a piece of home. This is the story of India's roots that stretched far and a diaspora that rose to shape the world. One country, then another, and another one after that. The British colonial greed was unending. Their rule rapidly spread across the world, and with it, the Indian diaspora. A diaspora is the dispersion of people from their homeland, and in India, this was a legacy of colonial rule. As the British Empire expanded, Indians found themselves in all corners of the world, and this happened for different reasons. In countries like Fiji and Mauritius, Indians were mostly sent as contract laborers. But in countries like Australia and Canada, people traveled looking for better opportunities. Whatever the reason, from the North Atlantic to the South Pacific, Indians were everywhere. In some places, they were openly accepted and treated mostly fairly, like New Zealand. When India became independent in 1947, there were about 1,200 Indians in New Zealand, and they enjoyed what the government at the time called complete equality. But in several other countries, Indians were openly discriminated against. Australia had about 4,500 Indians at the time. All of them had citizenship rights, they could vote, but they were legally discriminated against. They did not have equal pension or accommodation rights. Or take the Caribbean, for instance. They had a sizable Indian population, about 170,000 Indians in Trinidad and a similar number in British Guyana. They were offered full citizenship rights, but Hindus were not allowed to cremate their dead. So just 2 months after attaining independence, India decided to change this, to not just look after the Indians at home, but also those abroad. The Constituent Assembly held several meetings about this. They came up with an action plan, case by case. And 1 month later, New Delhi quietly spurred change. High commissions engaged with local authorities. They highlighted the prejudice in Commonwealth countries. India spoke up, and slowly things began to change. Cut to today, almost 8 decades later, the Indian diaspora is not just an asset to the world, it is a force to reckon with. Globally, the Indian origin community stands at 35 million. This is the world's largest diaspora. Out of this, more than 15 million people are NRIs, non-resident Indians. NRIs are Indian citizens who reside outside India. This could be for work, education, or any other reason. NRIs retain their Indian passports. They are considered Indian nationals. So why are they part of the overseas diaspora? That's because of the duration of their stay outside India. In one financial year, if you live outside India for at least 182 days, you're considered an NRI, a non-resident Indian. Then we have a second category. Earlier it was called PIO, persons of Indian origin, meaning people of Indian descent who have foreign citizenship. This applied to everyone except nationals of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and a few other countries. In 2015, this category was merged with OCI, Overseas Citizens of India. These are foreign citizens eligible for Indian citizenship on or after January 26, 1950, or a descendant of someone who fits in this category. Now, initially, PIO was applicable for 15 years, but with an OCI card, you get a lifetime validity, also lifelong visa-free travel to India and unlimited stay without registration. Long story short, OCIs are very different from NRIs. NRIs have an Indian passport, they can vote in India, they can hold government jobs. OCIs cannot do any of that. Also, OCI is not dual citizenship, it is simply a privilege introduced as part of India's outreach to the diaspora. Today, about 20 million people are OCI card holders, and together with Indian citizens living abroad, they make a 35 million strong diaspora. These are people who have shaped global diplomacy, economy and politics and enhanced India's soft power. Today, Indians are contributing to the global workforce. They are powering entire industries. Look at the booming tech companies. You will find leaders of Indian origin. Indians are at the helm of massive corporations. They're also shaping policy. People of Indian origin have become leaders of more than 30 other countries. And this is astounding. Have you heard of the term Girmitia? This was an agreement made by the British. They transferred indentured laborers from India to other colonies. In the 19th century, the first group of Indians was taken to East Pacific countries and the Caribbean islands. They were taken to work on plantations. The term Girmitia came from the word agreement. The locals called an agreement a girmit, and those who signed it were Girmitias. It was a shrewd plan to benefit the colonizers. It led to many of these people settling there permanently. Generations later, countless families of Indian origin still call these countries home. But today, Indians are not relocating as part of someone else's clever scheme. They are not doing it out of desperation to survive. They are doing it with the determination to thrive. The US has the largest Indian population in the world. It stands at over 5 million. It's about 1.6% of the country's overall population. And Indian Americans have proven to be leaders, whether in education or household income. About 77% of them have a bachelor's degree or higher. They're also the top earners among all Asian groups in the US. Same with Europe. Indians rank as the top immigrant earners in Europe's largest economy, which is Germany. The Indian diaspora is known for well-educated, often well-paid workers, primarily in science, technology, engineering, and maths, or STEM. And these are just two examples, the US and Germany. Indians abroad help in boosting the global economy. They're also contributing to the Indian economy. Take remittances, for instance. This is the money that members of the diaspora send home. India tops the world in remittances. And this year, the number hit a record high. The overseas Indian community transferred $135 billion to India. Plus, when Indians go abroad, they invite more foreign investment into the country. They engage with other nations. They foster relationships that help their home country. They maintain the Indian connect. And while there's so much to celebrate, the Indian diaspora also faces a range of issues. Many conflicts ail the world. And Indians who live and work abroad, especially as migrant laborers, are often caught in the crossfire. Plus, many governments have made migration harder, mostly in the West. And even though the Indian diaspora is generally regarded as law-abiding, progressive, and extremely productive, racism persists. Time and again, we hear reports of Hindu temples being vandalized abroad, or Indian workers in countries like Ireland being attacked and asked to go back to where they came from. There are no easy fixes for this, and the government knows this. But over time, they have boosted preparedness. Welfare mechanisms and structured evacuation in times of crises, from digital portals that address grievances to legal and social protection. There's an effort to shield the diaspora from fraud, land encroachment, and so on. There's a range of policies and tax benefits to encourage investment by overseas Indians. There are schemes to ease labor mobility of Indian origin workers. India has labor pacts with at least 6 countries. There are cultural and educational programs, especially for the young, to help them stay connected to their roots. Since taking office in 2014, Prime Minister Modi has personally engaged with the diaspora in all parts of the world. Everywhere he travels, he meets people of the Indian community and invests in this relationship. Diaspora is no longer seen as brain drain. They are seen as India's global ambassadors. who represent the values, culture and heritage of their home country on the world stage. So much so that we now have a day dedicated to them, the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. This event was first held in 2003 to mark the anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's return from South Africa in 1915. Since then, it is held every year for the ambassadors of the world to celebrate their contribution to the growth of India and the world, and most importantly, to form a community of people to help understand their challenges and to harness their collective power. And so the story of the Indian diaspora is not just about movement, it's about resilience, it's about rising beyond borders. From indentured laborers on plantations to presidents, CEOs and change makers, they've carried India with them in values, in culture and in spirit.
भारतीय डायस्पोरा का इतिहास उनके उस देश में पहुंचने और वहां अपना परचम लहराने की गाथाएं, ये भारत की अहम विरासत है।
And today, as they shape the world, they continue to strengthen their bond with India. Because no matter how far they go, they're never too far from home. It's been a busy week in Pakistan. Their leaders were busy threatening war against India. If the idea was to rile up the people, you failed. Because Pakistanis were focused elsewhere, on their cricket team. The men in green played West Indies this week and they lost the one-day series. It was sort of like a double whammy. For starters, they lost the final match by 202 runs. That's 40 times the number of fighter jets they lost to India. And to make it worse, they lost the series. Their first series lost to the West Indies in 34 years. So forget Asim Munir's deranged threats. Pakistanis were busy issuing their own, not to India, but to their own cricket team.
हाँ, बहुत खुश हूँ। खुशी से पागल हो रही हूँ। जमीन पे तो मेरे पाँव नहीं टिक।
आपकी टीम की इंटेंट हर टके की टीम के खिलाफ मुस्कुरा के हारते हो। आप हमारे खिलाफ गुस्से से क्यों खेलते हो? मसला क्या है?
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Several protesters were detained and dozens injured in anti-government protests in Serbia. 2 firefighters died battling overnight wildfires in Spain, and lava continues to flow from Italy's Mount Etna. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1947, British India was partitioned into 2 countries, India and Pakistan. The partition on religious lines led to the displacement of 15 million people. It was the biggest migration in human history. The ensuing violence also killed over 1 million people. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.